All right, we back once again. Options, premium, reading, predicting the markets. That's what it's all about. It's an art form, not a scientific method. So you guys out there, ladies out there, looking for a buy or sell signal to tell you when to get out, and profit targets, and this, that, and the other thing. This is not for you. This is going to be about learning a method that I learned from the great Sam Parikh, Smarter Trader, and some people don't like him. The guy is amazing to me, and I totally 100% believe that this method is the real deal. So learning how to read premiums is, like I said, an art form. It's going to be something you have to practice, something you have to develop your own little edges and ways to read it. But I'm going to give you my simple version of it, and it's going to use basically just SPX and Apple as kind of a starter here. And obviously, when I do this, there's a lot more on the watch list, just because you can't sit there and watch SPX and Apple while Zoom is ripping or Tesla's going crazy, and you're not prepared for it. So I would obviously have quite a few tickers to watch. But if you're just getting started, obviously watching SPX or SPY and watching something simple like Apple or Tesla, watching the premiums and how they react to the underlying movements, that's the basis of it. Now, the way I set it up is I will come in here in Fidelity here in the options chain, and I'm going to have this week's premiums for the highest open interest and the most obvious strike levels. I will have this week's premium set up. So I might, for Apple, in this case, I just have the 150s and 160s, but I might have the 150s, 155s, and 160s loaded up for the closest expiry, which would be October 29th. And then I would also have next week's as well. So November 5th, I'm looking at those strikes too. And obviously, I don't want to be messing around with earnings plays, so to speak, at least, because the premiums around an earnings or an event, it kind of throw you off a little bit, especially if you don't know what you're doing or if you're out of practice. So I'll try to only do this if I know the ticker really well, like a Tesla, or if I know there's no earnings coming up, or at least they're a long ways away, then I will definitely have that kind of ticker on my watch list. But in this case, so then you also, going back, so you have the 29th. In this case, you'd have the 29 strikes, 150, 155s. So you're setting up almost like a calendar worth of premiums here, the 150s, 155s, and 160s. You set them all up under there. And then I'll have one super leap. So I also have the January 2024's 160s. Now, I'm not going to ever buy these because there's no reasons, but I'm going to use these next week's, and that super leap, I'm going to use all of these as a leading indicator, essentially, because what I saw in Sam's chat and what I saw with the way Sam played these was that these further dated strikes in general would get pumped before the ticker actually moved and before the closer dated strikes moved. And so if you start seeing, for example, if you're watching your list and you start seeing the leap start gaining a little bit of value, people started buying that. That's a little bit of a heads up that these closer dateds are potentially going to start getting some bids, and that's what you want to see. You want to see buyers coming into these, these leaps in 2 weeks out, a month out, that kind of thing. And that will give you an indication, if those are gaining in value, that you can come into this closer dated week and buy those and potentially, catch a little bit of a wave up as people move down the chain and move to closer expiries, as they start seeing the flow coming through, as the dealers start having to get hedged, this, that, and the other thing. You're going to start catching some appreciation happening in those closer dated. And what's nice about buying the closer dated and using this method is because you're risking less, versus coming out and buying $2,000 worth of an option. You're now only buying $200. So, and you're able to potentially catch 50%, 100%, which is all you're really after, the base hit. Now you will catch bigger plays, especially using this method, because you will start getting a feel for how far the stock can run based on the premiums. And I do this with SPX as well. So I'll always have the SPX options up there. I'll usually have a put or two, same kind of thing. Where I'll have like one put for this week, one put for next week. But if I'm only long, if I'm really only looking to go long because that's where the trend is going, then I'll mostly have 90% calls, unless I'm super bearish on a stock. But 90% calls on all the tickers. So now, next thing, how to price premiums. So let's go back to Apple here in this case. How to price the premium. Now this is, again, Black-Scholes models, whatever other model you want to use, doesn't really matter. What I've learned is that if you watch an options chain long enough, you'll understand the pricing. Like if you go watch like Melly, Mercado Libre, or Shop, or CMG, those type of, or BKNG, those type of huge stocks, a lot of times the pricings, the spreads, will all be similar because there's not a lot of liquidity there. And so you'll start seeing it, eventually you learn after watching the chains long enough, you eventually go to a stock's chain and you can go, okay, this is mispriced. Because this stock can rip this much and they only have it priced here. So like CMG is a good example. CMG can rip 20, 40 in a second, and sometimes you'll come into CMG and look at the chain and be like, they've got the 10 points out at $1, with like 3 days to go. This thing, any day, any moment now, this thing can rip 20 points, and they've got 10 points out at $1. So it's an easy opportunity for a 1 to 10 right there. Because if it's at 1900 and they've got the 1910s priced at 1 or 150, and it can rip to 1920 and it easily, I've seen it do it in an hour, just out of nowhere. Then, it can easily hit 1 to 10. So again, that's another kind of, again, you're developing, a practice or developing a system that works for you with that. So I'll always have like a CMG, just like maybe 1 or 2 on the watch list, or like a BKNG, because sometimes those premiums get super dirt cheap because the stock doesn't have a lot of volatility for a few days and all the liquidity dries up in them. And then you can go in and buy some cheap lottos that could work out really well, because once the stock rips, all that money comes back in and those premiums just go crazy. And I don't know how many times I've played a CMG 1 to 7, 1 to 10, just because you're just watching it all day on your watch list. You're watching those strikes and you go, they're retarded to sell this here at $1. And so same thing here. You're doing the same thing if you watch a ticker a lot, like a Tesla or an Apple. You're going, it's crazy they're selling. It's crazy that the 160s are even here, in my opinion, looking at Apple. And I haven't watched Apple a lot because I don't really trade it that much. But for me, this is like IV pump here, just because does Apple have earnings coming up or something? I don't even care about Apple earnings, but they must. Let me go look here before I say something stupid. Yeah, okay, so they do, and it just ripped a whole bunch. So this is another reason you get the earnings pump. That's the reason why those premiums are so jacked, because these are nickels. These should be a nickel premium, kind of like these right here. But even these are pumped. So you can look at the entire chain. If you go out to the top of the chain and those are a nickel, then you can feel fairly confident buying the closer range, as long as these premiums stay up. Your premiums here are gonna catch appreciation. So that's another way too. Watching the entire chain. If you can't even buy the 200s on Apple for a nickel, say they're going for I don't know how many times I've seen Tesla. Let's just take them for example. It might even be like this now. But I don't know how many times I've seen Tesla where the furthest out of the chain is, look at this. They won't even let you buy this without, getting hit on the spread, because, I don't know what happens here, but the IV just gets crazy through the entire chain. Like there's 0% chance that Tesla goes to 1800 by October 29th. Yet you can't even come in here and buy these for a nickel. You gotta come in here and mess around with a spread. So that tells me that you can come in here and buy, look at this, the thousands. You could probably catch appreciation off the thousands. You can probably catch a lot of appreciation off the 950s. You can just buy the stock and just let it ride. They're scared. What this means is when they raise this ask like this, they're scared. Whoever the sellers, the market maker is for the options, they don't want you coming in here and buying these for a nickel and being able to sell them a few minutes later at 30 cents or 50 cents, because they want you to pay up for them, basically, is what I'm saying. Because they know that at any moment the IV for this thing just goes crazy and those premiums get pumped and the options maker, the market maker, just gets reamed. So, understanding how this works, even in an elementary sense like myself, will definitely help you if you're an options player. Now, if you don't have a watch list for your options, this is a problem. Just because you're not able to watch that strike that you want, you don't get to watch how it reacts. Because if it's not reacting right, then you gotta get rid of it, and find a strike. Either find a strike you like or find a ticker that is actually going to move. Because otherwise, you're just gonna be watching a dead stock for that week or that 2 weeks, and so you don't want to do that either. So another one obviously is Tesla. You would obviously, if you can play Tesla, have Tesla up there and a few strikes. Anyways, I'm not going to go through all that. This video is getting kind of long. Hopefully this helps you in answers some questions, probably raises some other questions. If you do have any, leave them in the comments. And if you like this kind of content, subscribe. Peace.